Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Today on Sports Files, we'll discuss the hiring of Tubby Smith as the new University of Memphis men's basketball coach. And I'll be joined by a panel of local sports media experts. The resume speaks for itself. Orlando Henry Smith, better known to all as Tubby, has been hired as the new men's head basketball coach at the University of Memphis. The 64-year-old has a wealth of experience, is highly respected in the industry, and brings with him a list of accomplishments that could make many coaches green with envy. Tubby won a national championship while at Kentucky, has taken a record-tying 5 different schools to the NCAA tournament, and has amassed well over 500 career wins. In replacing Josh Pastner, the University of Memphis hired the polar opposite, and the powers that be are ecstatic about hiring a coach away from a Power 5 school with the credentials that Tubby brings with him. Now, with all that said, this wasn't the splash hire that many fans had hoped for. It's not Greg Marshall, considered one of the best coaches in the game, or the accomplished Buzz Williams. Playing devil's advocate, he's a coach whose better years may very well be behind him, and whose coaching future appears not far from its shelf life. Today, we'll discuss the hiring of Tubby Smith and what it means for the immediate and long-term future of the program. Joining me is the Tigers beat writer from the Commercial Appeal, Jason Smith, my radio partner at Sports 56 and 87.7 FM, and program director Eli Savoy, and John Martin from 92.9 ESPN Radio. It's Tubby time, and it's next on Sports Files. Well, guys, first of all, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Wanted to start off talking about the hire of Tubby Smith, which we'll get to in a second. But earlier this week, some news that I think surprised a lot of people, and that involves Dedrick Lawson. Because the week prior, he said he was coming back to the University of Memphis for his sophomore season. Now, he has filed for paperwork to be in the NBA draft. Doesn't mean he'll stay there, but I think that has thrown everybody for a loop. Jason, let me start with you. What happened?
Well, it's a peculiar situation to say the least. I mean, last week you had Dedrick announcing that he wasn't going to test the waters, that he was coming back. So here you are, 8 days later, and Dedrick's announcing that he's back in and actually filing the paperwork this time. So he's actually not signing with an agent, so he can come back to Memphis. But so what happened in the middle? I think it's all what we assumed, that Tubby Smith's probably fighting his first battle in Memphis, and that's, I think, with Keelan Lawson, and probably what kind of position Keelan Lawson will have on the staff next year.
John, it seems like Tubby, at least actually talking to Jason Smith, had said he deserves a spot on the roster, but he didn't, or on this coaching staff, but he didn't say assistant coach.
Right.
Could that be the problem here, that he wants him on the staff, but he doesn't want to give him one of the 3 assistant coaching positions?
Well, I think that's an important distinction, because you can be on the staff without being an assistant coach. I mean, a staff it's director of basketball operations, it's other supplementary and support roles. So, I think with Keelan, you're an assistant coach. You've been an assistant coach for the last 2 years. You want to remain an assistant coach with this new staff. And my presumption was, seeing how this went down, Dedrick issued a great long statement to Jason Smith last week about how he wants to play with his brother. I mean, it was very detailed. It was heartfelt.
Right.
I mean, you could really sense that this was something he wanted to do. And now 8 days later, he's reneging on that completely, and now he's entering his name in the draft. I think that suggests that Keelan has not gotten what he wanted from Tubby in this new sort of tenure.
Eli, Tubby's been there, he's done that. Nobody's going to tell him what to do. But you have 2 Lawsons, one that's almost ready for the NBA, and he apparently says no to them. I don't understand, because most coaches would say, bring him on.
Well, yeah, but the thing with Tubby is, one, again, he's done it. He knows how to run a program, knows how he wants to run a program. And what are Dedrick's options? If he finds out that he's not going to be a first-round pick or whatever his level is at the NBA, he doesn't have much. He's not going to transfer and sit out a year. He wants to be in the NBA after next season for sure. So it's this power play, and who holds the leverage is going to be interesting, and at how Diedrich's evaluation process plays out probably decides exactly where the leverage is in this whole thing. And it is kind of funny that you've got Keelan trying to make sure his sons are taken care of and he's taken care of, and he's battling for a position on the staff with Tubby, who's trying to take care of his son, Saul, who's probably the guy that will take the spot that would have been Keelan Lawson's spot on the staff.
I can't imagine Dr. Rudd and Tom Bowen aren't saying, what? We just hired this guy. We thought everything was kumbaya. What's going on here?
Here's the question. Did Tom Bowen or Dr. Rudd, Tom Bowen probably, did they have a meeting with Keelan Lawson last week when they didn't have a coach and say, look, we want your kids, we want you on that staff next year? And when you looked at the timing of Diedrich's announcement, well, then it makes sense. Then Diedrich's, if Keelan knows he's in the fold, well, then Diedrich's announcement makes all the sense in the world. He's back because he knows his dad's back. Now, a week later, he's pulling out, and it makes you think, okay, something's going on with the job.
But John, shouldn't you say that to Tubby Smith when you're courting him, that, all right, here's our situation. We don't have a lot of players coming back, but we do have these Lawson kids. But you have to keep Keelan on the staff to keep the kids.
Yeah, I mean, that would, ideally, if you sit down with Keelan and you make promises, right? If that's something that happened, then you have got to absolutely communicate that to your incoming coach. Now, those negotiations kind of got heated. I mean, Texas Tech made a counteroffer, and maybe that all gets lost in the shuffle when you're trying to make sure that you don't lose him. And I wonder at what point do you say, if you're Memphis, listen, we'll worry about that detail later, because we're trying to make sure we don't lose Tubby Smith to Texas Tech, because those negotiations took all of that Wednesday. So I think that's something that should have been communicated, but I can also see how that gets lost, that detail gets lost in the shuffle when you're trying to make sure that you can, because you can't tell Tubby Smith, who's a 65-year-old man who's been doing this his whole life, who he can and can't hire. Right. That's just not something that you can do.
Well, that's you get so long in the negotiations, and are you going to really say it's a deal breaker if Tubby says, well, listen, I'll find a spot on the staff. I'm not telling you he's going to be an assistant coach. I'll find a spot on the staff. You're not going to say, well, no, he's got to be an assistant coach or this deal's off the table. You're going to say, all right, let's get Tubby hired, and we'll probably be able to figure this all out down the road.
Yep.
But you hate to lose a kid of that caliber, and the two kids possibly, who knows what KJ will do, for what could be semantics. Assistant coach, director of basketball operations, the pay wasn't going to drop, I don't believe.
Well, and here's the other thing. What do you have to sell for next season other than Diedrich Lawson and quite frankly, his younger, KJ Lawson? I mean, KJ obviously appeared in 10 games, but he averaged 8.8 points. You figure he's going to be a big part of next year's team. You take those two away, what do you have to sell? I'm with Eli and John. You don't think that next year was going to be great anyway, so it'd be okay to have it down here. But you've got to get butts back in seats next year. You've got to get season tickets sold. If you don't have Diedrich Lawson, how do you sell them?
It's two guys, and it's only 1 year probably with Diedrich.
Sure.
But I would imagine there's going to be some sort of backlash from the fans. Even those who support this move of bringing in Tubby Smith, they're probably like, wait a minute, we're going to get Tubby and keep Diedrich. Now Diedrich's leaving because of something that involves my dad and Tubby. They can't be too happy about that.
Well, I do also wonder, I mean, first impressions are very important, and I do wonder if this does get messy, what will this say to the community of Memphis? Because obviously Tubby's going to have to be out in the community recruiting. I mean, obviously he's going to have to get players from Memphis. And I do wonder, Keelan is a respected figure in the Memphis basketball circles. He won state titles at Hamilton. He's been here for a long time. So I do wonder what this will say to other figureheads in this community in the basketball circles if Tubby comes in and just and doesn't sort of oblige what Keelan wants. I do wonder how that will go over in these basketball circles.
Well, I wonder though with fans what the reaction would be, just Tiger fans, not necessarily, because there may be some that look at him as the kind of the last tie to the Josh Pastner era and would say that's fine if they're not there. Like, we're completely moving on from the Josh Pastner era. And a lot of people didn't like the whole way he used the kids to get the job in the first place. So it would be interesting, I think, to see if they lose to their two best players, but it is this thing of kind of standing up to that, what the reaction would be from fans.
I'm with Eli. I think especially some of your older fans, your old school fans that love the way Tubby's done it, go Tubby. Yeah, we're not going to be held hostage by a dad and who's got good players, because they're his sons. Right. You would have some support for that. I don't think there's any question about it.
All right, this episode aside, your thoughts on the hire. Do you like, I'm not going to ask is it a good hire because we'll find out, the proof will be in the pudding. But do you like the hire? John, let me start with you.
Yeah, I liked it in terms of what was realistic for the University of Memphis. I think once Greg Marshall and Buzz Williams were sort of taken off the board, once those became unrealistic, I think if you go out a lineup, right, of Andy Kennedy, of Steve Forbes, of Tubby Smith, of Eric Musselman, I like Tubby. I like Tubby more than those guys because I know what I'm getting with Tubby Smith. He's a guy who's overachieved everywhere he's been, at historically difficult places to win in Minnesota and Texas Tech, made the NCAA tournament last season with Texas Tech. So I think his ability to coach, his ability to teach, and his success overall, I like the hire. I think he's as close to a guarantee as you can get at this place right now. And I think that's what they need after some down years. I think you need as close as a 5-year guarantee as you can get, and I think that's what Tubby Smith represents.
Eli, did you like it from the get-go, or did you have to be sold on it?
When I first started hearing about it, I kind of was thinking, for a rebuild, do you want a guy that's 64 years old? But the more I looked at it, I think for where this program was and coming off of what it just came off of, I think it works really well, because I think having gone through a really inexperienced coach who never seemed to have control of the program, I think a guy who demands respect because of his track record, who knows how to run a program, and who's kind of a CEO. I think that's what I look at Tubby Smith as, kind of the CEO of the operation. And I think that's something this program has lacked for the last 7 years. So I think it fits really well with where the Memphis basketball program is right now.
Jason?
I do. I agree. It's a good hire. But you're right. We can't really make the judgment on it now. I think the concern with Tubby, here's the thing. After Josh Pastner, as Eli just pointed out, the question was always, can he coach? Can he coach? Can he coach? Mm-hmm. No one will ask, can Tubby Smith coach? You've solved that part. The question for Tubby is going to be, now that he's in Memphis, and obviously an old school guy is used to doing things his way, can he get players doing it his way? We all know there's kind of a game that you have to play. Now, Josh got so far sucked into it that he had to hire kids' dads to get Memphis players. Tubby obviously won't get sucked into that, but there's a game. There's a face-to-face meetings you're going to have with 20-something-year-old AAU coaches that typically hadn't been the kind of way Tubby likes to roll. He kind of likes to let his assistants do that. Well, in Memphis, they want to see the head guy. Right. So at some point, Tubby's going to have to do some things that maybe he's not comfortable in doing to land Memphis guys.
Did they purposely go polar opposite of Josh Pastner, or was it just a big coincidence that they end up getting a guy who's completely different than Pastner in every way?
No, I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that's probably something they identified from the outset. Listen, we have gone the unproven assistant coach route. We have gone the unproven route. We need somebody who can get us back to good health as a program, who can take our players, who can get us in the NCAA tournament consistently, maybe make a Sweet 16 run. Like I said, I think this is a paramount time for the University of Memphis in terms of getting back fans. I mean, there's financials at stake here, and I think what Tubby Smith represents, again, is somebody who is close as close to a guarantee as you could get in terms of guys who are realistic. So I think that was absolutely something they identified. We need somebody with a track record who wins, and that's all Tubby Smith has ever done.
Jason, Pastner went away from the recruits in the city for the most part. He took a few, but he went around the country. Of course, he's a national recruiter. But there's reasons why he also wanted to stay away from the Memphis kids and dealing with the parents in the inner circle. Sure. Josh had to depend on that, and we saw a lot of situations, the Nichols situation, the Kings, where he couldn't handle that and had to deal with parents. Tubby Smith, again, been there, done that. Right. I can't imagine he takes much gruff from any parent. So do you think this guy will go more national? It'll be a nice mixture, and how will he deal with the Memphis kids?
I have a feeling it's going to be a nice mixture, that he's not going to be, it's not going to be an all Memphis kids type program. I think just because you so many hassles come with that. When you've got so many Memphis kids, people in their ears telling them all the time, you should be playing this, you should be this good, that good. That becomes an issue, and it obviously overwhelms Josh. I mean, it's particularly the dads of those recruits were a problem for Josh. I don't think the dads of those recruits will bother Tubby Smith. He'll be able to keep those guys at bay, but I also think he'll be able to keep a nice little mix of the two. The thing is, Tubby and his crew have been, and his staff have been used to going after the 3-star guys, the 2 3-star guys that they could coach up. Now in Memphis, typically you're going to have 4 and 5-star guys, so it's a new challenge. You're in a new war. You're in something that you hadn't been the last few years at Texas Tech and Minnesota.
Eli, do you think Memphis they've obviously paid $3 million for this guy, 5-year deal that averages out $3 million, but from the get-go, do you think they wanted their next coach to make that type of money? Were they trying to go a lot lower, but it ended up being $3 million?
I'm not sure they wanted to pay that much, but with where they believe this program is stature-wise, that's the market. I mean, that's just is what it is. You have to be prepared to pay that much money. And especially if you're paying your last coach $2.6 million, because Tubby knows coming in that, listen, this is what you guys have set your market for as a basketball coach. I'm a basketball coach with years of experience in a national championship.
Exactly.
I deserve that or more. And then when you get into a bidding war, certainly you got to prepare to play. So if you think you are the type of program that Memphis believes it is, and I think we all believe it is, that's your market value. And I mean, plus once they save the $9 million on Josh Pastner, heck, they had won the lottery, so who cares about paying $3 million now?
Jason, the staff has not been announced, but it looks like you've done a pretty good job deducting who you think will be on this staff.
Yeah, it looks like the Texas Tech staff. It looks like Joe Esposito. It looks like Pooh Williamson, Alvin Pooh Williamson, and Saul Smith. Quite frankly, Saul obviously was working a video role at Texas Tech. But, you know, if you're Tubby, you know, here's the position you're in. You voluntarily decided to leave Texas Tech. So I'm sure as a coach, when you leave jobs, you feel like you've got an obligation to the guys you just left. They're not working now because you've decided to. So if you're in Tubby's case, and we're looking at the whole Keelan situation, he's kind of got his hands tied. He's got to take care of his guys, and then he's got to, you know, he's obviously got a coach who's been here that's got players, so he's in a tough spot.
And it just worked at Texas Tech. I mean, they came into a bad situation and in 3 years got into the NCAA tournament. Yeah. Here, they're coming into a rough situation, trying to rebuild this program. Well, why not bring the guys who just helped you do it at a tougher place to do it?
Well, what if Vince Taylor was the ingredient, though? What if he was the guy that's not coming? Turnaround. He's the one guy that's not coming. So it would be Memphis's luck. You leave the one guy who was most responsible for the turnaround.
Somewhere else in terms of program. Yeah.
During the coaching search, we were talking about splash hires, and you mentioned the names, Greg Marshall, Buzz Williams. How do you think this coaching search went? Do you believe that those gentlemen were contacted? Do you believe Tubby was the only one ever interviewed for this job? Do you have any insight on that, John?
I don't believe Greg Marshall was ever seriously contacted, if at all. I think Buzz Williams was contacted. I believe there were talks. I don't think it ever got really serious. From what I heard, Buzz slow played them. You know, Buzz never really committed. You know, he kept saying, let me think about it, let me think about it. That was my understanding. I don't think it ever got serious with anybody else. I think Tubby was at that point, once it's not going to be Greg Marshall, once it's not going to be Buzz Williams, I think the guy that they zeroed in on was Tubby Smith. I think, again, because for all the reasons that we pointed out, you know, he's got the credentials, he's had a national championship, he's established. It's the antithesis of Josh Pastner, which I think that in and of itself is a sell to Memphis fans when you're trying to get people back in the FedEx Forum. Listen, here's a guy who's done the complete opposite of what Josh has done. Right. This isn't an unproven commodity. We know exactly what we're getting with Tubby Smith. He gets players to buy in. He's going to overachieve, and I think that's why it made sense.
You look at the resume. He's been there. He's done that. 5 teams that he brought to the NCAA tournament, trying to make it 6 at Memphis. But it wasn't the splash hire that everybody had hoped for. And then there was, of course, the Penny faction that wanted Penny Hardaway to get the gig. So how do you think the fans' reaction will be, Jason, especially at the box office next year?
Well, it depends on if Dedrick Lawson's back. Certainly does. And you know, it depends on who else Tubby has. It depends on what graduate transfers he's able to add, what kind of roster is going to be there. Look, I don't think that Memphis got inundated with calls the day they hired Tubby Smith with, hey, I want to buy season tickets. This is going to be a process that's going to take time. Memphis needs to get Tubby Smith out front in the media and saying, hey, get people excited. That hasn't happened yet.
You're right.
Obviously, for reasons, Tubby's got to get caught up with recruiting, but look, they've got to get some tickets sold, and right now, if you're going into it the way it is, I don't see any excitement surrounding it. They've got work to do.
The day they sold tickets was the day Josh Pastner left.
No, true that.
Like that's where people got excited. Quite frankly, I mean that's just the facts of the situation. So those people that were teetering whether they renew for this year or not, if they were going to do it, that was the day. Tubby, I don't think really changed much that day, but the fact that he's not Josh Pastner, and when Josh Pastner left, that's what was the key.
Well, and to that point, I don't think there's anybody they could have hired that would have, outside of Greg Marshall or Buzz Williams.
Yeah.
Penny maybe, because you're just gonna have Penny fans. You know, Penny Hardaway is a legend here. But outside of like realistic,
sure.
In terms of the realistic people they could have hired, I don't think there's anybody like Eric Musselman. Is Eric Musselman going to drive you? You know what I mean? No. I mean, and that was the candidate pool. So I think with Tubby, the one thing you can point to is, you know, again, national championship winning coach.
But even with those names, it's going to take time. You always say, Eli, winning cures most of the ills, right? Well, let's see if this team wins. Once they win, we know Tigers fans will come back.
Oh, there's no question. That's the thing. And this coming season, nobody's going to have high expectations of a great winning season.
Right.
Hopefully, the hope is that they keep those tickets that they've had for years. The ones that didn't show up this past year, even though they had the tickets, actually show up and put their butt in the seats too. But yeah, if you start winning, then everybody will be back on board. I mean, John Calipari, they didn't flock there at the beginning.
Right.
Once he started winning big is when that place was sold out. You couldn't find a ticket.
The thing is, they cannot flop the first couple of years. It can't be a complete flop to the point that those 2018 and 19 kids that are coming out of Memphis look at it and say, no, I'm not going there. You've got to win enough that those kids believe that, hey, when I go there, Tubby's going to coach me up and we can go to the Sweet 16 or National Championship.
Are you worried about style selling that to the kids? I know what he said in the press conference. He likes to push it. He really doesn't. Let's look at the history of his teams. Does that style turn off some of these recruits?
I don't care about style so much as I care about winning basketball games. Sure. You know, I mean, now that may turn off some fans. And I guess if you're a guard and if you're going to be signed up to play at a place that scores 55 a game, I can see why that might be off-putting. I don't think that's what's going to be. I mean, that's not. I think Texas Tech had the 26th best offense in the country last year. That's not how he played at Texas Tech with athletes. So I don't really worry about that as much.
But I can guarantee you, there's a player who might be looking at Virginia and he says, wait, I don't want to play in that offense, Tony Bennett's offense. Yeah, they win a lot of games, but that's not good for me. I need to show off my skills. I think it could affect some recruits.
I agree with you. I think the reason it could is because the AAU coaches that are and a lot of times controlling these kids' recruitment, they believe that. They believe that Tubby runs a slow style. And I think that's why Tubby has changed his pitch. It's all about the pitch, and he's willing to say, I'm going to run an up-tempo system, when we all know that Tubby runs more of a controlled system. And
the thing, too, I mean, that's the part of the job is to recruit kids that fit your style. So, yeah, it might turn off some kids, but Virginia still gets guys. Right. They win a bunch of games.
Right.
Very true.
Wisconsin still gets kids, and they win a bunch of games. So they find ways to match their style with kids that fit it, and they go win a bunch of games.
John, what'd you say?
Virginia got that kid from Memphis.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, I think there was a kid.
Oh, that Austin Nichols guys.
Yeah. How's he doing?
I don't know. He hasn't played a game yet, but we'll find out.
I think he'll be
all right,
okay.
so let me ask you this. Getting back to the
next season.
First of all, do you think the age question has been overblown, or is there some worry about that because he is 64? What's the longevity of Tubby Smith at the University of Memphis, Jason?
You know what? I don't. When you look at the Final Four, I think Tubby's people pointed that out. I think the average age was 65 of the coaches in the Final Four. So he's got that going for him. You know, where age matters is when you roll out of bed, how young or how old you feel. If Tubby's ready to go in there and talk to those 20-something-year-old AAU coaches that have all the players, then he'll be fine. But if he's that old school, old kind of fart guy that doesn't want, I'm going to do it my way, hey, that may not play here. That may not play in Memphis.
But what's the longevity of any coach, right? Like whether they're 34 or 64, how long can you reasonably expect a coach to stay in one place? Especially a place like 6 years, 7 years, 8 years.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you don't see coaches last much longer than that at one stop.
No, and Jason's right. It's not about the number. It's about how you feel.
Right,
I mean, he may feel like he's 45 years old and he's ready to go out there and recruit all around the nation.
Threw a great first pitch earlier this week. Looked good.
But Eli, is there a problem possibly with communication with 17 and 18-year-olds when you're all of a sudden 70 and you're coaching?
There theoretically could be, like you said, but again, I mean, Jim Boeheim's still finding a way to communicate with them and these guys. And I think it's easier when you got a program rolling and he's coming in new, trying to rebuild a program, but he just did it at Texas Tech. Like, I think he's obviously figured it out. He has dealt with 18 to 22-year-old kids for the last 25, 30 years. He's figured out how to communicate with them.
Yeah, great coaches figure it out. And I think that's what we were seeing with Josh, was a guy trying to figure it out on the fly. Tubby's already figured out whether it's an assistant that relates to him or whether he's pulling him in the room and playing the dad mentor role. He's a guy who's figured it out, so there's no question.
But I'm sure they'll push back because they're 18-year-olds. But then he's got to demand the respect, and when he gets that respect, then they'll be fine.
Well, you know who I'm confident that Tubby will be great with? Mom and dad. Tubby is going to be great with whoever it is in the household, mom, dad, both. I think he is the type of coach where he'll sit you down in a living room with mom and dad, and they're going to fall in love with Tubby. I think maybe that you might have to have an assistant sort of act as the conduit between player and Tubby in the worst case scenario. But I do think parents will come to trust him and like him very quickly when they meet him. I think he'll play well with them.
10 seconds. Charlie Moore, still a possibility?
Still a possibility, but a lot of schools involved right now, and Tubby's starting from basically ground zero, so that's going to be tough to do.
John Martin, Jason Smith, Eli Savoy, thank you so much for your time. Great insight. We'll take a short break. Be right back. The NBA playoffs got underway this past weekend, and it appears it'll be short-lived for the Memphis Grizzlies, whose depleted roster has been well documented. The Grizz fell twice in San Antonio before the scene shifted to Memphis for Game 3 last night and Game 4 tomorrow. Without Marc Gasol and Mike Conley, the Grizzlies entered the playoffs as the longest shot on the board in most Vegas books. Even with the dynamic duo, the task would have been extremely difficult as the Spurs put together a spectacular regular season, only eclipsed by the record-setting Golden State Warriors. Now, next week, we'll have much more on the Grizzlies and their future. And that'll do it for now. Have yourselves a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.